17. Black actresses who were murdered by their lovers. Love is supposed to protect you, but for 17 black actresses, it became the weapon that destroyed them. These were stars adored by millions of women who broke barriers and built empires, yet they were murdered, betrayed, or slowly killed by the very men who said, "I love you." Behind the lights, there were bruises. Behind the smiles, there were threats. And behind the fame, there was fear. This is not just tragedy, it's a chilling pattern Hollywood never wants you to see. Are you ready to uncover the darkest side of love and power? Watch till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence. Teresa Graves. Teresa Graves rose to fame with her iconic role in Get Christie Love, becoming the first black actress to lead an American action television series in the 1970s. In an era where Hollywood was still full of racial and gender barriers, she dared to break through, bringing the image of strong women to the small screen, inspiring millions of viewers. Teresa was more than just a star. She was a revolutionary icon, someone who opened the door for the generation of Viola Davis, Angela Bassett, and Regina King to enter. But few people knew that behind that halo was a battle for survival in a toxic love that she could not escape. Raymond appears as a charming, charismatic, and powerful gentleman. At first, he makes Teresa feel appreciated, but the romance quickly turns into control. Raymond does not want his girlfriend to be more successful than he is. He pressures her to give up big opportunities, interferes with her schedule, and even sets a condition: if you do not obey, you will lose everything. Teresa is isolated from her colleagues, loses film projects, and her career begins to decline. Every argument is followed by threats, anger, and emotional violence. From a heroine on the screen, she becomes a hostage in her own relationship. When she was too tired, Teresa decided to leave Raymond to find freedom. But freedom did not come. After the breakup, she entered the scariest period of her life. The calls in the middle of the night with only breathing sounds, the suggestive text messages, the strange cars parked in front of the house, all made her live in a state of paralysis. She left Hollywood, lived in seclusion in a small house in Los Angeles, hoping that the past would rest in peace. But Raymond did not. In 2002, a peaceful night suddenly turned into hell. A fire broke out in the kitchen, spreading throughout the house. Teresa tried to run to the door but could not open it. She died in pain, her body burned by the fire. The case was ruled an accident, but neighbors said they had heard threats before. Raymond did not attend the funeral. No explanation. The death of Teresa Graves shocked Hollywood. A trailblazing star ended up alone. Her love turned into a death sentence. Many investigators and fans believe it was no accident, it was revenge. Her story became a harrowing testament to the fact that fame cannot protect women from the violence that lurks behind closed doors. And the tragedy raises a serious question. Why is society so slow to hear the cries for help from women destroyed by the men they love? Jayne Kennedy. In the 1970s, Jayne Kennedy stood as a symbol of beauty, grace, and ambition. Crowned Miss Ohio and later rising to fame as an actress, sportscaster, and model, she broke barriers for black women in entertainment. Her dazzling smile and confident spirit made her one of Hollywood's most admired stars. Yet behind the glamour, Jayne faced a turbulent marriage with fellow actor Leon Isaac Kennedy, whose growing jealousy and insecurity would soon destroy everything she had built with her own hands. By 1981, their relationship had turned toxic. When Jayne's career began to soar, earning television roles and endorsements, Leon's resentment grew. In a moment of revenge, he released a private recording of their intimate life to the public, an act that crushed her image overnight. Hollywood, once eager to praise her, turned its back. Sponsors vanished, producers stopped calling, and her name became a target of cruel gossip rather than respect. The emotional toll was devastating. Stripped of trust and dignity, Jayne withdrew from the spotlight. The woman who once inspired millions with confidence and charm now faced a cruel reality. Her success had been undone not by failure or scandal, but by betrayal from the person she once loved most. The entertainment industry offered no protection, no compassion, only silence. It was a powerful lesson on how fame and love can collide, leaving even the strongest women defenseless. Today, Jayne Kennedy's story endures as a painful yet important reminder of resilience. She rebuilt her life away from Hollywood, focusing on her family and faith. Her fall from grace became a symbol of how easily admiration can turn to condemnation. Behind her radiant legacy lies one unshakable truth. Sometimes the greatest wounds are inflicted not by enemies, but by love itself. Lola Falana. Lola Falana was once known as the Queen of Las Vegas, the first black woman to dominate the entertainment scene of America's most luxurious city in the 1970s. With her seductive beauty, fiery charisma, and top-notch singing, dancing, and acting skills, she became a rare, multi-talented entertainment icon. Major casinos were willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to have Lola on stage, and her image even covered billboards along the boulevard. But the bright lights hid a cruel truth. Behind each glamorous performance was a woman who was constantly exploited by powerful men who only saw her as a decoration for their status. In the treacherous world of showbiz, Lola met countless businessmen and millionaires who came to her not for love, but for fame. They promised to support her career, whispered sweet words, but in return they controlled, dominated, and abused her. She became the spoils of war of the rich who wanted to show off their power by owning the most attractive woman in Las Vegas. Loneliness began to creep into Lola's life. Even in the spotlight, she still felt swallowed by lies. When her career was still at its peak, a big shock hit her in 1987. Lola was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a neurological disease that gradually causes the body to lose its ability to move. The disease changed her life completely. In pain, exhausted, and unable to perform as before, Lola had to withdraw from the spotlight. And at her weakest moment, an old lover suddenly returned. He showed concern, took care of her, and promised to help her overcome the difficulties. In the fatigue of illness, Lola trusted and signed papers that she was not strong enough to read carefully. When she realized all the assets accumulated over decades, performance contracts, copyrights, real estate, had been transferred to her name. She was robbed of everything at the moment when she was no longer strong enough to fight back. From a stage queen, Lola Falana had to live quietly away from the spotlight, without a husband, without children, without family by her side. The betrayal did not come from the enemy, but from the person she once loved. The disease continued to ravage her body, and the mental pain made her sink into isolation. In 2023, Lola passed away in silence, without relatives by her side, without a grand funeral, without worthy words of gratitude. An icon who once made Las Vegas kneel left this world as if she had never existed. And the heartbreaking question resounded, why did a legend have to die alone just because she believed in the wrong love? Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll wasn't just an actress, she was a revolution in American television history. In 1968, she became the first black actress to star in a primetime sitcom, with Julia breaking every racial stereotype on the small screen. Her portrayal of a strong, independent black nurse, not pigeonholed as a maid or a slave, inspired millions of women. Carroll was nominated for an Emmy, won a Golden Globe, and walked the stage like a queen. But as the spotlight shone on the stage, darkness quietly crept into her personal life, and the man she loved opened the door to tragedy. In the early 1980s, Diahann met Harrison Briggs, a wealthy, handsome, and charismatic businessman. He made her believe that this was the mature love she had been looking for. Harrison proposed a large-scale real estate investment with her promising huge profits. Trusting her, Diahann poured millions of dollars of her savings into the project, even mortgaged it. But after a while, everything disappeared. Harrison suddenly disappeared. The account was emptied, the project did not exist. Carol panicked and realized that she had been deceived by the man who had whispered words of love. The shock was not only financially devastating, it was heartbreaking for a woman who had once been the strongest in Hollywood. Not long after, while trying to revive her career, Dayahan discovered that her former manager had secretly embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties. Betrayed twice by those close to her, she went bankrupt, lost her home, and lost her faith. When breast cancer struck, Dayahan had to fight alone. Those who had applauded her in the past fell silent. Those who had used her name to make money disappeared. The TV queen was now left with only pain medication and long, lonely nights. On October 4th, 2019, Dayahan Carroll breathed her last breath at the age of 84. She passed away without fanfare, without the honors she deserved, without her lover by her side. Her life is a heartbreaking testament that success does not protect anyone from betrayal in love. A legend who paved the way for a generation of black women died alone, poor and sick. Not because the world forgot her, but because the man she trusted most pushed her into the abyss. And the painful question remains, why are the strongest women often destroyed by the weakest love? Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was more than just a singer. She was the greatest voice of her generation, the first black woman to dominate both pop music and cinema worldwide. With over 200 million records sold, 7 consecutive #1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 and a Grammy Award, Whitney became the epitome of perfection. But behind the spotlight and the applause, she lived in a hell called love. It wasn't love that healed her. It was a relationship that destroyed her career, her soul, and ultimately, her life. In 1992, Whitney married Bobby Brown, a famous but scandalous singer. Initially, they were considered the power couple of R&B, but only a short time later, the scary truth began to emerge. Bobby was a drug addict, abusive, extremely jealous, and dragged Whitney into a dark spiral. The arguments turned violent. The bruises on her hands, the times she disappeared from the stage because she was sick, were actually the result of being beaten. There were rumors that Bobby once punched Whitney in the face, causing her to swell up, and she had to use thick makeup to hide it from the public. From a pure angel, she gradually fell into addiction, lost her voice, lost her image, lost herself. Despite years of suffering, Whitney tried to maintain a perfect family image, but the darkness was too great. She divorced in 2007, thinking she could finally be free. However, the effects of a decade of abuse and addiction took a toll on her physical and mental health. Panic attacks, loneliness, the pressure of fame, and old trauma meant Whitney never fully recovered. A close friend revealed, she was always scared even though she left Bobby. Her mind was still trapped in that hell. On February 11, 2012, Whitney was found dead in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel just hours before she was due to appear at a Grammy party. The official report said she died from a combination of drowning and drug use. But the truth was more haunting. Her body had many bruises, signs of collision or violence before her death. Many people in the industry confirmed that she had had a violent argument with Bobby Brown the night before. Some witnesses said that a strange man entered her room and disappeared. The hidden details further convinced the public Whitney did not simply die alone in the water, she may have been murdered by her past. Whitney Houston's death is not only a loss for music, but also a painful warning. When love turns to violence, even legends cannot escape. Vanity Denise Katrina Matthews. In the glittering decade of the 1980s, vanity-born Denise Katrina Matthews embodied the image of boldness, beauty, and rebellion. As a Canadian-born singer, model, and actress, she became an international sensation under the mentorship of music legend Prince, leading the girl group Vanity 6. With her striking confidence and fearless performances, she redefined what it meant to be powerful and feminine in a male-dominated industry. But beneath the lights and luxury, Vanity's world was slowly being destroyed by a storm. She could not escape a relationship that would leave lasting scars. Her marriage to David L.D. Alexander began with charm and promises of devotion, but it soon turned into a nightmare. Friends recalled that her once radiant spirit dimmed as she faced constant mistreatment behind closed doors. Repeated confrontations left her physically and emotionally wounded, forcing her to seek medical care multiple times. Those who knew her said that she tried to cover the pain with her trademark smile, but the exhaustion in her eyes told another story. The industry, quick to celebrate her beauty, looked away from her suffering. Behind the glamorous facade, she was a woman trapped between fame and fear, desperately searching for peace. As the years passed, Vanity's health began to decline. The relentless stress, coupled with dependency on substances she turned to for comfort, ravaged her body. In 1994, she was diagnosed with severe kidney disease that would shadow the rest of her life. Though she later sought redemption and found faith, her body had endured too much damage to recover. In her final years, she spoke openly about her past, admitting how fame and heartbreak had nearly consumed her. Her voice, once filled with energy, became fragile, a reflection of years spent fighting both inner and outer battles. On February 15, 2016, Vanity passed away at the age of 57, leaving behind a legacy both luminous and tragic. Her journey from superstar to survivor revealed the hidden cost of beauty ambition and misplaced love. She was more than an icon of the 1980s. She was a woman who endured the consequences of cruelty and fame, yet never stopped yearning for light. Vanity's story reminds us that even in a world obsessed with perfection, pain often hides behind the sparkle. Tina Turner. Tina Turner, the woman the world hailed as the queen of rock and roll, not only changed music, she redefined the extraordinary power of a black woman in a male-dominated industry. With her stormy voice, explosive energy, and unmatched stage presence, Tina became a living legend. But behind every powerful kick, every legendary scream was a wounded body and a heart crushed by the man she once called husband. The outward success did not reflect the inner tragedy, and Tina Turner's life was the cruelest proof. In 1962, Tina married Ike Turner, an ambitious but ruthless musician. He turned his wife into a money-making machine, controlling her entire career from her schedule to her dress code. But the worst part wasn't the control. It was the relentless physical and mental abuse. Ike beat her backstage in the car and even on stage. Whenever Tina was injured, Ike forced her to continue performing as if nothing had happened. He used his fists to punish her and his words to destroy her self-esteem. In her memoir, Tina wrote, "I lived through hell," and that hell was called Ike Turner. The climax came in 1968 when Ike beat Tina so badly that she nearly died, ending up in the hospital with a fractured skull and a bloody body. But instead of being protected, she was forced to keep silent to maintain the image of a happy couple. From 1962 to 1976, Tina lived in a series of mental torture, enduring betrayal threats and isolation. Finally, in a night of escape, she left behind her fame and money, taking only 36 cents and a gas card. She divorced and started over from zero. But although she escaped Ike physically, her mind was never free. Obsession nightmares, fear of men, all followed her for decades. Tina Turner was reborn, returning to the top with What's Love Got to Do With It and becoming a global legend. But beneath the spotlight, the scars never faded. She admitted, "I forgave Ike, but I couldn't forget." Many loved ones said that even when Ike died in 2007, his ghost still haunted Tina. On May 24, 2023, when Tina Turner passed away at the age of 83, the world mourned an immortal icon. But behind her proud smile at the end of her life was a heartbreaking truth. She had conquered the stage but had to fight all her life to escape the man who had sworn to love her. And her death left humanity wondering, why is it that even a queen is not safe in love? Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman was known as the Queen of Soul, a singer who sang not with her voice, but with her soul. Standing 6'1" with her regal bearing and soulful voice, she conquered Broadway R&B and jazz, becoming one of the most versatile artists of the 1970s and 1980s. But what made Phyllis special was not her technique, but her honesty. She sang about loneliness, longing for love, and the inner struggles she faced. Ironically, her music was a cry for her own fate. Behind the spotlight, Phyllis was no powerful diva. She was a desperate woman on a journey to find true love. During a period of seemingly happiness, Phyllis fell into a deep relationship with a man she believed was the last one in her life. She gave her whole heart, gave up career opportunities, and was willing to step back to nurture the relationship. But then, he left her suddenly without any explanation. The shock was so cruel that Phyllis felt torn apart from the inside. She once said, "I had everything, except love." From that moment on, her spirit gradually collapsed. Feelings of betrayal and unworthiness made her lose faith in herself. The woman who had stood in front of thousands of audiences could no longer stand still in her own room. That pain dragged Phyllis into a spiral of severe depression. She started taking sedatives and sleeping pills to forget the feeling of emptiness. When the drugs were not enough, she turned to alcohol. But instead of healing, they destroyed her mental and physical health. Friends tried to help, but Phyllis refused. "I don't want to be saved, I just want to disappear." Long nights she sat alone in the dark, wondering why she could touch the world with her music but could not find someone who truly loved her. She still went on stage, still radiant, but her eyes were always filled with sadness that the audience could never fully understand. On the evening of June 30th, 1995, just hours before her performance at the Apollo Theater, Phyllis called her ex-boyfriend. Her voice was shaky and desperate. "No one loves me. I can't take it anymore." The man didn't show up. No one showed up. And that night, Phyllis Hyman drank swallowed pills and took her own life at the age of 45. She left a note. "I'm sorry, but I have to go somewhere else to find peace." Phyllis's death was not just the passing of an artist, but a silent indictment of how toxic love and loneliness can kill even the strongest people. Her story reminds us sometimes it's not the knife that kills you. It's abandonment. Tammy Terrell. Tammy Terrell was one of Motown Records' most brilliant singers, bringing to life timeless duets like "Ain't No Mountain High Enough" with Marvin Gaye. Her sweet demeanor, infectious smile, and stage presence made Tammy the muse of Motown, a rising star beloved by the world. But behind the spotlight, her life was a series of hidden tragedies. She didn't die because of fate. She died because of the hands that once said they loved her. Tammy's story is a heartbreaking testament to how the wrong love can be a death sentence for a star. In the early years of her career, Tammy fell into a relationship with James Brown, the King of Soul, who was also a terrifyingly violent man. James not only controlled her, but beat her so badly that her friends had to drag her away. Once after a performance, Tammy returned backstage and was beaten by James until she passed out. She was hospitalized with bruises and lacerations, but because of James's reputation, she was forced to keep quiet. Tammy eventually escaped from her first demon, thinking she would never suffer pain again, but fate brought her to an even more dangerous man. After James Brown, Tammy fell in love with David Ruffin, the lead singer of The Temptations. At first, he was gentle and romantic, making her believe that this was true love. But soon, a dark side emerged. David was an addict, a cheater, and a violent man. He had multiple wives at the same time, even beating her in front of others. Worse, he once smashed a glass bottle on Tammy, leaving her with lifelong scars. In 1969, in a fit of jealousy, David punched Tammy in the head, knocking her out. From then on, she began to suffer from severe headaches, blurred vision, and loss of balance, symptoms of severe brain damage from violence. Soon after, doctors discovered a brain tumor. Despite multiple surgeries, her health continued to decline. But Tammy still tried to stand on stage with Marvin Gaye, despite her blurred vision, shaky legs, and heavy heart. Every time she fell, Marvin picked her up. The only person who truly loved her came too late. On March 16, 1970, Tammy Terrell died at the age of 24. Reports said she died of a brain tumor, but loved ones knew the truth. The disease was triggered and worsened by repeated beatings from the men she loved. Tammy was more than a victim. She was a warning to an entire industry. Talent may be celebrated, but Black women are still ignored until it's too late. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard was more than just a singer. She was the founding spirit of the Supremes, the greatest Black girl group in Motown history. It was Florence who named the group, recruited the members, and created the harmonious timbre that made the Supremes legendary with a series of Billboard-topping hits. Yet as Diana Ross was pushed to the center, Florence, the founder, was pushed to the sidelines. Internal tensions, label favoritism, and executive ambition gradually isolated her. In 1967, Motown kicked her out of the group, cutting off all support. It was more than just a job loss. It was a stab in the heart of the woman who had given it all. After being betrayed by her own brainchild, Florence fell into a deep depression. She tried to pursue a solo career, but Motown blocked her, blocking her contract, leaving her blacklisted throughout the industry. Money ran out and she had to live on welfare and work odd jobs to support her 3 daughters. While her career was in ruins, she married Tommy Chapman, who she thought would bring her peace. But tragedy struck again. Tommy became a heavy drinker, became violent and domineering. The beatings, humiliation, and control made Florence's life darker than when she was kicked out of the group. Not only was her body damaged, but her self-esteem was crushed. Years of abuse took a toll on Florence's health. She suffered from kidney problems, high blood pressure, and mental instability. Because of poverty, she couldn't afford medical treatment. At times, she had to borrow money to buy food, while the Supremes, the group she founded, made millions of dollars from the songs she helped create. Friends say she was beaten so hard she had to be hospitalized, but she returned because she had nowhere else to go. She lived in a shabby apartment in Detroit, battling illness, violence, and painful memories alone. She went from being an international star to symbolizing how the music industry can make and destroy a woman in a matter of years. On February 22, 1976, Florence Ballard died at the age of 32, reportedly from a blood clot. But her loved ones knew the truth. It was the result of years of beatings, exhaustion, extreme stress, and abandonment by both her husband and the industry she had once lifted to the top. Florence didn't just die of illness. She died of an indifferent society, a violent husband, and an industry that exploited and discarded Black women. Her death is a chilling reminder that even legends can be buried in oblivion for loving the wrong person. Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton was a rare musical phenomenon, the woman whose legendary whistle register in Loving You was so high it was almost surreal. She didn't just sing, she soared. With her 5-octave voice, gentle demeanor, and sensitive heart, Minnie became a symbol of powerful vulnerability. Audiences loved her for the purity and sincerity in her songs. But behind that light, her life was anything but smooth. Minnie didn't die of illness. She died of neglect during the most painful time of her life by the man who swore to love her forever. In 1976, at the age of 29, Minnie was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. Despite being given only months to live by doctors, Minnie performed, recorded, gave interviews, and inspired millions of women with her extraordinary strength. But as she battled the disease, another battle was waged in the shadows, the battle with emotional isolation in her marriage. Her husband, Richard Rudolph, also a music producer, was busy with his own career and gradually became distant. Many on the team shared that Richard was no longer physically present, leaving Minnie to suffer the fear of being alone. Although he was physically present, his heart had long since left. As her condition worsened, Minnie grew weaker, unable to stand on stage alone. But she continued to sing until her body could no longer support her. Night after night, she cried from the pain, but the most painful was not the physical pain, but the feeling of being emotionally abandoned by her beloved husband. She once confided, "I always inspire others. But who inspires me?" Close friends said that Minnie felt like she was slowly turning into a shadow in her own home. Richard continued to make music sign contracts and travel for work, while his dying wife needed a hand to hold hers. On July 12, 1979, Minnie Riperton took her last breath at the age of 31. She died in a quiet room without a loving embrace, without a final whisper from the man she was attached to. The public knew she died of cancer, but her loved ones knew that depression, loneliness, and the indifference of her partner killed her faster than the disease. Minnie Riperton was more than just the singer of Loving You. She was proof that even angels can be destroyed when love turns to indifference. And her death raises the poignant question, which is crueler, to be tortured or to be forgotten by the person who once said, "I love you"? Betty Davis. Betty Davis was once called the Queen of Funk, a rebel fire that shook the music scene in the 1970s. With her bold style, fiery voice, and unique stage presence, she became a symbol of Black women's liberation in music. Betty didn't just sing, she challenged convention, breaking the boundaries between funk rock and soul, paving the way for later artists like Prince, Chaka Khan, Janet Jackson, and Beyoncé. Yet this pioneer was buried not by audiences or limited talent, but by the man she loved, Miles Davis. Miles, a jazz legend, was attracted to Betty's freedom and strength. They married in 1968, but the marriage quickly turned to hell. Miles became jealous when Betty began writing and collaborating with other artists. Admiration turned to control. He banned her from performing, forced her to stay home, controlled all her earnings, and even used violence to keep her in line. Betty once said that Miles beat her not only with his hands, but also with words that destroyed her self-esteem. Worse, all contracts and copyrights for Betty's music were in Miles' name. She was the inspiration for the album Bitches Brew, but was not credited. Love quickly turned into an iron cage. In 1969, Betty escaped that toxic marriage by divorce, but she came out empty-handed. No money, no assets, no ownership of her own music. Miles used his influence in the industry to block any chance of her comeback. Record labels refused to sign her. The press called her too rebellious, too dangerous. From a cultural icon, Betty was pushed off the stage. She lived in poverty alone in a small apartment, no lights, no applause. She had to work as a laborer living on charity. She was silent from the world not because she had lost her passion, but because she was suffocated by violence and male power. Betty Davis died on February 9, 2022, at the age of 77, as quietly as if history had forgotten her. No grand funeral, no proper honor. A woman who changed the entire genre of funk music died alone. But the truth is, Betty was not only tortured by Miles in life, her legacy was also killed by a man who refused to let her shine. And that tragedy makes us wonder, why are women who dare to be strong always the target of destruction in love? Loleatta Holloway. Loleatta Holloway was once hailed as one of the most legendary disco vocalists of the 1970s, the woman behind the immortal hit Love Sensation, a song considered the Bible of dance music and sampled more than 200 times in music history. With a powerful voice, top-notch vocal technique, and rare emotional power, she was the heart of the disco dance floor. Audiences saw an energetic queen on stage, but they did not know that behind that vibrant singing was a heart that was hurt by the man she loved and trusted the most. Loleatta's life became a typical tragedy of Black women being exploited to the point of exhaustion by the entertainment and love industry. At the height of her career, Loleatta fell in love with a man who was a major force in the music industry. He initially appeared to support her career, saying he would help her reach legendary status. But in reality, he was using her as a money machine. He controlled her contracts, kept all her earnings, even forged her signature to withdraw money from her accounts. When she questioned him, he threatened to ruin her reputation and freeze her from the industry. Loleatta was caught between love, fear, and dependence. She understood that he didn't love her. He loved her money and the power her name brought. But by the time she realized the truth, it was too late. Her finances were ruined. Her contracts were tied. Her reputation was under control. In the following years, Lolaiata's health declined due to illness and obesity, and she had difficulty performing. Instead of being there to care for her, the man disappeared, leaving her in the weakest state. Friends said that Lolaiata was bedridden but still did not have enough money for treatment. The person who had stood on stage in front of thousands of audiences now had to live in silence, without lights, without applause. Worse, record labels continued to use her voice in remixes without paying her a cent because the ownership rights had been taken away by her ex-lover. Lolaiata did not just lose money, she lost the right to her own voice. On March 21, 2011, Lolaiata Holloway died at the age of 64, poor, sick, and alone. There was no grand tribute. No man who had sworn to protect her appeared at her bedside. The world only remembered her voice, but forgot the real person who had paid so dearly to create it. Lolaiata did not die of a simple illness. She died because she was exploited, deprived, abandoned. And her story raises a heartbreaking truth. How many talented women have been killed in silence by love disguised as career? Sylvia Robinson. Sylvia Robinson is hailed as the mother of hip-hop, the woman who changed the entire course of popular music. When she founded Sugar Hill Records in 1979, she became the rare black female producer to control a major label. She was the one who brought the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight to the Billboard Hot 100, the first hip-hop song to break the radio and commercial barriers. Not stopping there, Sylvia was also the brains behind The Message, the song that transformed hip-hop from a street party to a social voice. The world bowed to her boldness and genius. But while the public hailed her as the queen, few knew that in her own home, Sylvia was neglected without spiritual support and was gradually killed by the coldness of the man she called her husband. Joseph Robinson. Sylvia's partner and business partner initially steered Sugar Hill with her. But as she grew in fame and power, Joseph gradually withdrew, not to support her, but to withdraw from the marriage. He no longer cared about her feelings, leaving her to shoulder the company, the family, and the pressures of public opinion alone. He was there for me, but not really there, Sylvia once lamented. Silent meals and long, empty nights in the large mansion gradually made Sylvia lose her sense of love. Worse, whenever she was weak, Joseph did not comfort her. He just remained silent, leaving her invisible in her own life. It was not divorce. It was a soulless marriage. Unable to bear the emptiness, Sylvia began to seek escape. She turned to alcohol, painkillers, and then drugs, not for pleasure, but to numb her mind. She drank to sleep to avoid remembering that the only man who could hold her had chosen to turn his back. Associates recall one night Sylvia sat alone in the studio, eyes red, holding a glass of wine and saying, "I can run an industry, but I can't make my husband love me back." Depression crept in, destroying her health. She appeared less and less, then disappeared from the spotlight. The woman who had put hip-hop on the world map was now trapped in her own pain. On September 29, 2011, Sylvia Robinson died at the age of 75 of heart failure. But the truth was crueler than the medical report. Her heart had long since died from loneliness, from being ignored, from unrequited love. When she was dying, Joseph was not there, no hand to hold, no goodbye. The funeral was quiet. The world remembered the music legend, but forgot that behind the glory was a woman killed by the indifference of the person she trusted most. And Sylvia's tragedy raises a heartbreaking question. How many strong women have died, not because of enemies, but because of the silence of the person they loved? Zulema. Zulema Kuso was once hailed as one of the most profound and unique funk soul singers of the 1970s, with the ability to blend emotion and technique, making each song sound like a true confession. She was not as loud as other divas, but it was her subtlety and depth that made Zulema a favorite of critics. She signed a contract with RCA, released many quality albums, and had hits such as American Fruit, African Roots, and Wanna Be Where You Are. However, as her career was on the rise, her life took a dark turn, starting with a man who seemed to be her support, but was actually her destroyer. Zulema's husband, John Kuso, came into her life as a man who understood music and cared about her future. But once he took control, he became a jailer, not a partner. John forced Zulema to drop new contracts, claiming that he knew what was best for her career. In reality, he banned her from signing with major record labels, prevented her from collaborating with other producers, and stifled any opportunities for growth. From a rising artist, Zulema was pushed into a dark corner, unable to release music, unable to perform freely. Her passion was stifled, her reputation faded, and she gradually disappeared from the spotlight. Not because of a lack of talent, but because she was trapped in a toxic marriage. As the market changed, Zulema tried to maintain her love of music, but John used his mental and financial control to keep her from escaping. He took control of her income, forcing her to become completely dependent. In the following years, Zulema's health deteriorated due to illness. She began to have heart and lung problems requiring treatment and care. But instead of being there for her, John left her alone, not even paying for medical bills. The man who had promised to protect her disappeared when she was at her weakest. Friends say that Zulema was not only physically hurt, she was deeply hurt by betrayal. She once said, "I can forgive failure, but I cannot forgive the person who made me give up music." On September 30th, 2013, Zulema passed away at the age of 66 in silence and loneliness. No husband, no family by her side, no worthy gratitude. The press only mentioned her name lightly, as if a great talent had never existed. But the truth is, she did not disappear because of time. She was slowly killed by the wrong love. It was the man she trusted who crushed her career, burned her dreams, and left her to die in oblivion. And Zulema's death makes us ask a heartbreaking question. How many talented artists have been destroyed not by the audience, but by the person sleeping right next to them? Renee Diggs. Renee Diggs was the soul of Starpoint, a famous R&B band with hits like Object of My Desire that echoed throughout the stages of the 1980s. With her powerful emotional voice and charming demeanor, Renee became an irreplaceable face. She shined strongly, giving Starpoint its own identity in a period of fierce competition. The audience loved her not only for her talent, but also for her strong vitality. Few people know that behind the flashy lights, Renee is a profound, devoted woman who always puts love first. But it was that kind heart that made her fall into the arms of the biggest mistake of her life. A man who did not love her, only loved her benefits. In the early 2000s, Renee's life took a dark turn when she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis (MS), a disease that destroys the nervous system and causes the body to gradually lose control. When she needed someone by her side more than ever, her longtime lover Tyrone took advantage of her vulnerability. He discouraged her from aggressive treatment and deliberately delayed treatment, citing financial or unnecessary reasons. As her condition worsened, Tyrone tightened his control. He took control of her medical records, isolated her from friends and family, and left Renee trapped in a toxic relationship without the ability to call for help. As Renee gradually deteriorated, unable to walk, Tyrone didn't take care of her. He took care of her bank account. While she was bedridden, he drained her savings, appropriated her music rights, and exploited her fame for personal gain. Witnesses said he asked doctors to delay important treatment to save money, making her condition worse. Renee suffered not only physical pain, but also emotional betrayal to the point of despair. In her final days, she asked, "Why did the person I loved the most let me die like this?" But no one answered, because the person who was supposed to hold her was busy counting money. On August 6, 2005, Renee Diggs took her last breath at the age of 51 alone in a quiet room. Tyrone disappeared shortly after taking what was left of her with him. There was no man to hold her hand, when she left no farewell from her lover. Her departure was not just the consequence of MS. It was the death of a heart-exploited an artist stripped of her dignity by the person she trusted most. Renee Diggs was not just a victim of illness. She was a victim of a cruel love affair where love was turned into a silent murder tool. And her story made the whole world shudder. Sometimes the person who kills you doesn't need a weapon. Just pretend to love you. Laverne Baker. Laverne Baker was one of America's first rock and roll legends, the rare black woman who dared to break into a genre dominated by white men. With her powerful voice, fiery stage presence, and hits like Jim Dandy and Tweedledee Dee, she became an icon who paved the way for a generation of artists from Aretha Franklin to Tina Turner. Laverne didn't just make it big, she made it big. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991, proving that black women's talents could not be ignored. But ironically, while the world recognized her, the husband she trusted most was destroying her from within. Laverne's third husband, Danny, initially appeared to be a man who understood her art and respected her. But once they were married, he began to show his true colors, mentally abusing her, controlling her finances, insulting her abilities, causing Laverne to gradually lose confidence. Danny didn't hit her with his fists. He hit her with his words. "You're old who wants to hear you sing. You're worthless without me." These words were repeated every day, eating away at the soul of a man who had once been on top of the world. He controlled her money, took away her earnings from her performances, and made Laverne financially dependent and afraid to leave. He didn't need to kill her with violence. He killed her by destroying her bit by bit. In the years that followed, Laverne's health declined dramatically. She developed chronic heart disease and was hospitalized several times. Instead of caring for her, Danny told her that her illness was punishment for her inadequacy. Her coldness not only hurt her emotionally, it worsened her heart condition. Doctors determined that stress and depression rapidly weakened her heart muscle. Friends said that Laverne gradually became quiet, stopped smiling, stopped singing, and lost faith in her own worth. She who had once made the stage explode now sat alone in her room with her husband controlling her phone, her mail, and all her meetings. She was imprisoned in her own marriage. On March 10th, 1997, Laverne Baker breathed her last at the age of 67 after a severe heart attack. The painful thing is that even in her last moments, Danny insulted her, saying, "No one will remember you when you die." His last words were not goodbye, but a stab. Laverne died in pain, not because of illness, but because of a toxic love that had consumed her for years. The world honored her as a legend, but she died as an abandoned woman. And Laverne Baker's story is a bitter reminder not all killers use violence. Sometimes they just need to be near you and take your soul bit by bit. They were pioneers, icons, and voices that changed music and film forever. Yet the most dangerous place for these 17 black actresses wasn't the stage, but the arms of the men who claimed to love them. From fame to fear, from passion to control, their stories reveal how love was weaponized into silence, abuse, and ultimately death. These women didn't just lose their lives, they were erased by jealousy, betrayal, and a world that failed to protect them. Their legacies scream for justice. So now we must ask, is love still the deadliest threat black women face? Share your thoughts. Below this is Legends of Black Excellence.